I'm here with The End of Mrs. Barr Has Gone Too Far by Dan Gutman, illustrated by Jim Paolot, published by Harper's. It's from the My Weirdest School series. AJ's always been suspicious of Mrs. Barr. Last time he ripped open her suitcase, thought there'd be stolen jewels inside. It was just doggy underwear. It was almost time for my favorite part of the day, dismissal. Everybody was gathering up their pencil cases and backpacks. That's when Mrs. Barr came into our classroom. She was wearing the mask I made in art class. I just wanted to say goodbye, she said. We're going to miss you, everybody said. Some of the kids went over to give Mrs. Barr hugs. I'm going to miss you too, she said, as she went over and opened the window. Where are you going to travel next? Asked Ryan. Oh, I don't know, Mrs. Barr replied. Maybe Istanbul. That's in Turkey. Istanbul is the only major city that's in 2 continents. You can actually stand with 1 foot in Asia and 1 foot in Europe. Cool, everybody said. Or maybe I'll go to Indonesia, said Mrs. Barr. Did you know that Indonesia has more than 13,000 islands? The dismissal bell rang. That's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Mr. Klutz came into our classroom. Well, that's not the weird part. Mr. Klutz comes into our classroom all the time. The weird part was what happened next. This has been a wonderful week, Mrs. Barr, said Mr. Klutz. I want to thank you for giving up your valuable time in teaching our students about geography. I've had a lovely week, said Mrs. Barr. Thank you for letting me visit your school. And you'll never believe who burst through the door at that moment. Nobody. You can't burst through a door. Aren't you ever going to learn? But you'll never believe who burst through the doorway. 4 police officers. Freeze, dirtbag, one of them shouted. You're under arrest. Who's under arrest? We all shouted. The police officers pointed at Mrs. Barr. We all gasped. What did Mrs. Barr do? Asked Mr. Klutz. She's the notorious globe-trotting jewel thief, said one of the officers. I knew it, I shouted. Oh, she's the clever one, the officer continued. We've chased her from England to Italy to Asia and across the Pacific Ocean. She hides out in schools wherever she goes. Every time we're about to catch her, she slips away. But now we've finally nabbed her. Mrs. Barr has gone too far, one of the other cops said. There must be some mistake, Mr. Cooper said. Mrs. Barr's just a nice lady I met on vacation. Oh, yeah? One of the officers grabbed Mrs. Barr's suitcase. Let's have a look in there. She keeps her doggy underwear collection in there, Andrea shouted. Sure she does, the officer said as he opened the suitcase and picked up some doggy underwear. But underneath, the suitcase is filled with stolen jewels. See? He held up a fistful of necklaces and bracelets. Gasp! We all gasped. I told you, I shouted. Nobody needs a whole suitcase to carry their doggy underwear. What do you have to say for yourself, Mrs. Barr? Asked Mr. Klutz. But, she stuttered. We all giggled because Mrs. Barr said but, B-U-T. But it sounded just like but, B-U-T-T, even though it only has 1 T. You like taking trips, lady? One of the officers asked. Well, you're going to take another trip to jail. How interesting, said one of the other officers. Her name is Barr, but that's what she's going to be behind. Bars. Not if I can help it, shouted Mrs. Barr, and you'll never believe what happened next. You'll never catch me, coppers, Mrs. Barr yelled as she grabbed her suitcase. Then she ran over to the open window and jumped out of it. Gasp! We all gasped. Get her! Shouted the cops. They all jumped out the window and chased Mrs. Barr into the street. Sayonara, she hollered as she ran away. Adios, amigos. Nobody said anything for a long time. It was Mr. Cooper who broke the silence. I feel terrible, he said. I had no idea that Mrs. Barr was a thief. She seemed like such a nice lady. That's okay, Mr. Cooper, said Mr. Klutz. Nobody could have guessed that Mrs. Barr was a criminal, said Andrea. Hey, I guess she was a criminal, I shouted at Andrea. I tried to tell you, but you thought I was crazy. AJ was right all along, said Michael. Now we know why Mrs. Barr had that suitcase with her all the time. And now we know why she opened the window every time she came into a room, said Neil. So she could jump out if the police showed up. It seems so obvious now, said Ryan. But except for AJ, we all fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Why is everybody always talking about fish? Andrea had on her mean face. I knew why she was mad. Because I was right and she was wrong. This is all your fault, AJ, she said. What? If you had been able to find Spain on a map, said Andrea, Mrs. Barr never would have come to our school in the first place. My fault, I shouted. You believed everything Mrs. Barr said. I'm the only one who knew she was a thief. Ooh, said Ryan. AJ and Andrea are having a spat. They must be in love. When are you going to get married? Asked Michael. Those guys weren't my best friends. I'd hate them. Well, that's pretty much what happened. Maybe Mr. Cooper will stop showing us boring pictures of his vacations. Maybe the Great Lakes will stop bragging about how great they are. Maybe Dr. Brad will stop calling himself Frank. Maybe grown-ups will put on moisturizer so they don't have to rub their forehead so much. Maybe everybody will stop talking about fish for no reason. Maybe the police will finally catch Mrs. Barr and put her in jail. Maybe dogs will stop wearing underwear. But it won't be easy. Dan Gutman has other books that are time travel baseball books. This one, Jackie and Me, is about my favorite baseball player, Jackie Robinson, who broke the color line in modern baseball. So check that out here at the library, and also check out our Science Saturdays, First Page Fridays, and other programming on our YouTube channel. Bye-bye.